what this lecture is about tonight is not so much to give you a how-to step-by-step guide to open couple relationships. That would take us a lot longer than an evening. But rather to shift perspectives on some things, and therefore hopefully also have an idea of what it means to have an open relationship and what it requires in terms of our inner attitudes and shift in perspective regarding this. I've been on this tantric path for a bit over 20 years now, and therefore also had my fair share of experiences in different aspects related to this path. And of course, one of the areas of our life that we aim to integrate in a tantric practice, which is a practice that encompasses and integrates all areas of our life in our spiritual practice, would be that of love and relationships, and how that fits in this picture. Moreover, the couple relationship is one of the areas in which we can learn a lot of lessons and a lot of things about ourselves very, very efficiently, but also often with big challenges and a lot of emotions, especially when erotic energies are involved. Things are amplified, it becomes more intense, and therefore can also be incredibly confronting. So of course there is a lot of interest in such a topic, as you can see, obviously. It's one of the topics in our Sunday lectures that would attract more people. Now, we could consider if I had said it was a lecture about closed relationships, if there would have been the same interest. Not really, because we think we know how to do that, which is not actually true. If you look at statistics, we're not that great at closed relationships either, because we fundamentally misunderstand what it actually means to be in a relationship. And we don't put enough attention and energy on actually being in a relationship. And that is where we start. As we will see, apparently there is somehow an opposition between an open and a closed relationship. In reality, the only relationship that really works is an open one, is what I'm going to make the argument for. That may or may not mean what you think when you hear open relationship, but maybe you will agree with me in the end of this talk. Now, it should be obvious that two closed people cannot have an open relationship. So if you are a bit closed, you cannot have an open relationship, because a relationship is a reflection of you. Very often that's the problem, actually, in approaching open relationships, because I also want to underline here, when I speak about polyamory, or what we often consider is what we mean when we say an open relationship, I do not mean multiple sexual partners. You may or may not be into that, is none of anyone else's business. But it's not very interesting from a spiritual perspective. To have a lot of casual sex partners is basically what is called modern dating anyway, so everybody knows how to do that, and it's not very interesting from a tantric perspective. What I speak about when I speak about polyamory in the context of open relationships would be multiple love relationships, so simultaneous, parallel love relationships that may or may not be intimate. So they could have a physical intimacy or not, but they are love relationships. This is what I am referring to if I'm speaking about more than one relationship in the context of today's talk. So when two people who are closed have an open relationship, basically it leads to superficiality, and that's often where we end up with multiple sexual partners, or a lot of relationships that become a bit antagonizing. When I mean two people who are closed, I mean two people who are not fully open even to the relationship they have. And that is the sad reality, that very often we are in a closed relationship, even from the perspective that we are in a closed relationship with life and with ourselves, because we are not open, not completely open. We enter in a relationship with an openness of let's say 15-20%, sometimes not even that, out of what it would mean to be 100% open. We come with a lot of conditions, expectations, hesitations, ideas about what should or shouldn't be and so on, and we are not really open to what is there, which of course is a reflection of the fact we're not really open to life in a complete sense either. And being open to life is something that we need to begin by learning also in that context. This is where also, of course, it becomes part of this tantric attitude in front of life, of being open, being present, saying yes to life experience in a complete openness for what is. Not negotiating, not considering it's wrong, it should be different. Very often we are not so open in front of our life experience. We are not able to appreciate it for what it is. We have expectations, agendas, we have a lot of comments on what is happening, and we are not fully present and open and available with whatever is our life experience, meaning therefore also the relationship that we find ourselves in. If we're really honest, we will see that the emotional availability, the participation we have to a relationship, even if it's only one, is not 100%. It's varying, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it's rarely even 50%, if we're really honest. The time, energy, the presence we have there, the quality of our presence, our ability to embrace different aspects of the relationship and our openness to that experience and the other one as it is. So having an open relationship could be actually just one, but it for sure means that we start by being open to the relationship. Learning to be in a relationship in a different way and to actually be completely open and present and available for that relationship, appreciating it for what it is and letting go of our agendas and judgments and preconceived ideas and expectations and demands and so on. Learning therefore to engage in a completely different way that will allow us also to engage life in a completely different way. We can say this tantric attitude of saying yes to life and being open to life, being available for life. We use that in the relationship, but also learning to be open in a relationship, we learn to be more open for our life experience, generally speaking. So an open relationship, if I am to define it very simple, is a relationship in which we are as close as possible to 100% open for that relationship. And it may or may not mean that it is polyamorous. Now, of course, what happens when we are open and we don't have agendas and we don't have expectations and so on is often that there could be more than one, but I will return to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that, though. It means, first of all, that we are 100% open to that relationship. Otherwise, what happens is that if you are, let's say, 25% open in the relationship that you're in, which is already high for most people, you add another relationship where you're 25% open and another, and then that should make 100% openness. It's not. It's more of a split personality, and it creates a lot of tension. It doesn't add up, we can say, to 100% openness just because you're partially open for a lot of people. It starts by being completely open, at least with one, and then there can be a genuine openness that will then be 100%, we can say, in each of the relationships involved. Now, a condition for having an open relationship, which is integrated in a tantric practice and would be considered a tantric relationship in this way, is that it's coming from a place of love, that we are manifesting what we can call an active, radiant love. That is the secret behind being completely open to a relationship, that we are coming from the heart and that we are willing to open ourselves and to love without hesitation, completely giving our heart, we can say, in that relationship. In reality, to be ready for multiple relationships, we can say we should have a heart that is like the sun, that is radiating so powerfully with this active, radiant love, that it will shine on more people because it is so strong, that light. It is coming from a place of abundance, we can say, this expansion or this experience of more than one relationship, because there is a heart which is completely abundant. You even know the feeling a bit. When we are very much in love, but like newly in love, and we're really in that moment of your heart being completely opened by the grace of God, you have this feeling that you can't contain it. It's like it doesn't only shine on that person, it shines on everybody. Because it's not like, there is so much, you cannot just keep it in your heart. And you think everyone looks more beautiful, and you think everyone smiles at you more, in fact, because you're smiling at them. But somehow that abundance in your heart, it doesn't just go in one direction, it radiates everywhere because your heart is on. And that's only probably 15-20% of your capacity, even in those moments. So when we start to open fully to love, and we start to manifest love in this active, radiant way, it is abundant, and it is spreading its light, we can say, sometimes on more than one person. Also, we need this in order to really understand in a more profound way the open couple relationship, because I saw the most conflicts and the most difficulties, we can say, in approaching this topic is when we try to understand it logically. Also because we have a lot of preconceived ideas and taboos and social impregnations and so on this topic, that it like almost make us contracted just to look there, and then we try to figure out with logic how it may or may not work and what is right and what is wrong, and it's very much somehow a mental approach often, with a lot of triggers inside, because it's a bit of an uncomfortable topic for other reasons as well that I will return to. And then it just gets really confusing, and we tend to shy away from it a bit, or jump into it in a more superficial sense where it just becomes a bit of casual sexual partners and so on. It is only in the absence of the heart that becomes the reality. When we start by focusing in the heart, awakening the heart, loving more, having this active, radiant love, being completely open, knowing how to love at least one person, but really love, opening your heart, you also start to access a different dimension of understanding. Because the heart, as we say, has reasons that reason cannot comprehend. You connect to a space that is outside of time and space, actually, when we go in the heart. They speak a lot about it also in different modern scientific experiences, this field that you enter when you center in your heart, where you connect in a completely different way out of the mental frame and so on with the environment and with other people, and you access a different mode of functioning, basically. Also what we call in the tantric practice the supramental level, or the level of the mind, which you access through the present moment or through a heart that is filled with radiant love, where somehow the mental function is completely different. It's not operating on linear logic anymore. It has a different way of comprehending things and of relating to experiences and also to other people. It basically let us access a dimension beyond time and space. You might even have had a little glimpse of it somehow when you are very much in love, in these moments where your heart is very awakened, that somehow you exist in a timeless space, where things look very differently, where you relate to life in a very different way. And usually it doesn't last super long, because then we fall into our normal habits and ways of dealing with things and interacting, and we forget that very special state that let us live in this timelessness that had a completely fresh perspective on life. Basically, what it shows us when we really access the heart is a different way of existing, where things make sense in a different way. And when we can enter that space also, we can get out of a lot of these preconceived ideas and, we can say, limitations that we have put on ourselves and that we put on ourselves when we try to solve everything from the mind, and when we are so, we can say, in the grasp of social conditionings and taboos. And things will make sense from, we can say, a unified perspective. In order to have the correct perspective on open relationships and the whole experience of a relationship in reality, we do need to put an emphasis on this centering in the heart and awakening the ability to love. Of course, I can recommend yoga practice as a wonderful way of doing it, but also on a very practical level to love. Love is how you learn to love, by doing it, basically. And to put an emphasis on that first and foremost, before you start to think of how should I structure my relationship, and if it's an open relationship, how does it work, and making rules and plans and structures and so on. To start with loving. How good are you at loving in this moment? How open is your heart? How available are you for that relationship? How much can you radiate that love from your heart and so on? Start with that. Start in the center. You will also see that it is and remains, in fact, your central relationship is that with your own heart. And that is from where everything else, we can say, is built around it. What is important when we consider a relationship as an open relationship? Of course, it is a relationship that can grow, but also it is a relationship that has always a higher purpose. When we are in a relationship just for our own personal satisfaction, because it makes us feel good, because it gives us pleasure, because we like it, because we want something, because for whatever reasons we are in that relationship, we are not 100% open to that relationship for sure. Because then comes the expectations, the agendas, the hesitations, the blame, all sorts of things there. Because we are in it for a very, very specific outcome, we can say, which is usually our own satisfaction, if we are honest. A relationship that's open, therefore, needs a higher purpose. Of course, you can say, okay, but what's that higher purpose of the relationship? If you just started something, how do you know what the higher purpose is? A very good higher purpose to have in the beginning of a relationship is to make the other one happy. It sounds very simple, and it also sounds a little bit counterintuitive, considering that most often we go into a relationship to make ourselves happy. But we will see that even if it sounds like a big sacrifice, to make the other one happy, just try and see what happens. Because you will discover something quite miraculous in that process. When both lovers really aim to make the other one happy as a higher purpose of their togetherness, something starts to happen. And we start to enter already a different mode of existence, where things start to unfold very, very differently than what we have been used to until this point. And that is just, we can say, apparently a small shift in perspective. It creates an avalanche in your life. Be very attentive to this, when you, especially when you enter a relationship, but also if you're already in one. Notice your motivation, so to speak, in this direction, and look for a higher purpose. Now, of course, the higher purpose can evolve. There can be other purposes appearing from that relationship along the way. If it is a tantric relationship, then it will also have higher purposes in terms of the spiritual evolution of the two lovers, and we can say common spiritual goals that they will have and so on. So there will be a higher purpose, a higher reason for being together that creates profound openness. It sounds like it's a sacrifice to begin with, that we are not just in it for our own satisfaction and pleasure. We replace it with something that is a lot higher, and we receive a lot more. Not to mention that we create a relationship that will be much more fulfilling and actually will be able to last. An open relationship, and why we would consider it so important in a tantric practice that a relationship should be open, at least in the sense that you are completely open to that relationship, same as you are completely open to life, is that if you are not open to a relationship, if you are closed towards it, or you are closed towards life, it basically means you resist transformation. Life evolves, life unfolds, you are meant to grow with it. You are meant to evolve with the speed of life, but often we are holding back, we are resisting. We have different ideas and a lot of complaints, so to speak, in that. Same in the relationship. We don't want it to change, for instance. We will even say, oh, but it's not how it used to be. No, but you? I mean, hopefully not. You will not be the same, you will not stay the same. Neither will a relationship, nor should it. A relationship is meant to transform, to evolve, to grow, to move with the two lovers as they are moving, and not to stay the same. When we're just in it for some pleasure, we have an idea of what gives us pleasure, and we like it how it is in the beginning because it makes us feel good, and then we like it to stay like that. Maybe to put it more on an edge, we can use the example of having a child. Because often, even when we teach about the couple relationship here in Tara, we compare it to having to being the child, we can say, of the two lovers, the first child for sure of the two lovers. And if you imagine you have a little child, and it's very cute when it's small, and you like it, and it's so sweet, and then when it starts to grow, you get annoyed. Something is wrong. He is not how he used to be. The little one is not. It's bigger, and now it's even getting ugly, and so on. What is going on? I don't want it anymore. It doesn't make any sense when it's a child, because if the child wasn't growing, you should be worried. It should be growing. It's normal. That's what happens when something grows up. Same for a relationship. It's not meant to stay the same. It's something that's alive, same as you are alive. It's not going to be the same from the first moment you met, and it was just a tiny little toddler there as it was growing a bit in the beginning. And after 20 years, you should be very worried if it looks the same. It means it's not alive, basically. So we need to shift our perspective on the relationship a lot like this. And that is important to keep in mind, because exactly when we kind of use it a bit just for our satisfaction, rather than really appreciating it and being open to the relationship, we get annoyed when it's not anymore giving us exactly pleasure in the same way as we expected, because now it's different. And we're not even open to find out the different ways in which that can bring us joy or enrich our life. So basically, staying open means being open to transformation, to be open to transform and to grow and to learn and to move, we can say, with life and with that relationship as it is unfolding. If you hold on to yesterday, there is no tomorrow, as the saying goes, which is very wise in this. It is the sure way of ending a relationship, holding on to yesterday. Because yesterday will disappear, and you will get so angry you will throw it all out, and there will be no tomorrow. A very wonderful example in this direction, and of course my examples will tend to be from a feminine perspective, since that's the one I know the most. I mentioned in some of the Shakti groups often before this example of Scheherazade from 1001 Nights. She's a fictional character, but nevertheless a very wonderful role model in many ways. Maybe you know the story. Basically, she gets married to this king who decapitates his new brides every morning to make sure that she's not unfaithful. And that has happened with many, many, many women, and Scheherazade comes and she starts to tell him a story. So fascinating that when dawn breaks and he's supposed to decapitate her, he needs to hear the ending. And he lets her live for another night, and then another night, because he starts another one if she doesn't finish, and so on. After 3 years, he stays married to her and decides not to kill her at all. And it's happily ever after. But anyway, what I just wanted in this context to point out with her is that she has exactly this attitude of being completely open to what is, without holding on to yesterday and without expecting anything from tomorrow. Imagine like this woman who basically knows that if things don't go well, she will be dead tomorrow. But she doesn't go there complaining about it, or whining about it, or being all closed up about it. If she would do that, she wouldn't live, because her stories wouldn't be fascinating. She goes there completely open, rich and full of life, and she tells stories like never before. Completely open for whatever that moment brings. And she lives, and she even gets her happily ever after, because such a woman deserves it. So this attitude of being completely open and giving ourselves 100%, because that's what she does. You can imagine if a woman like that would not give herself 100%, she would not have the next day. Now, I don't mean that anybody should feel under that kind of pressure necessarily, but we should consider that our relationship living depends on that attitude in reality. If you want a fairy tale ending, that's the attitude you need to have. Also as a man, you need to be there 100%. You need to be present there, give yourself 100% in that experience, and not just sit there and complain and hesitate and kind of find it unfair, the situation. We need to be open and we need to be present in that. Something that we should be very attentive to also in this connection is that we tend to compare, we can say, the relationship with how it used to be. That when we complain about how it was not the same as it used to, the whole comparison, especially when there is more than one relationship, becomes a little bit of an issue, and often is completely misunderstood. If we compare the relationship after 20 years to how it was in the beginning, it doesn't make any sense. Also not if you compare a relationship that has existed for 20 years to one that is just in the beginning. It doesn't make any sense. You will say, look, the one that has existed for 20 years can drive a car, if we talk about kids, for instance. He can drive a car, and it's like the toddler, what does he do? Put things in his mouth or something. It doesn't seem very impressive. On the other hand, the toddler is growing 1 centimeter every month. He's in an intense process of growth and full of life and so on. Can't say that about the 20-year-old. It's always a matter of perspective, we can say, of who is the most in that moment, because you cannot really compare. It's two completely different things to compare a little new relationship to something that has happened, going on and deepened for 20 years. And also it would be wrong to compare your relationship after 20 years with how it was in the very beginning. It's a very, very different thing. But often when we get caught in comparing and we consider something is missing, which is a limited perspective in that moment, and means we are not looking at the bigger picture and more deeply at what is really there and what is really present. Now, one of the reasons why we are very afraid often of open relationships, especially open relationship when it means more than one, is that we're not very open for feedback. We're concerned, we can say, about feedback. Maybe you know the joke. Man and a woman, husband and wife, after 20 years of marriage, are having breakfast, and suddenly she slaps him. And he's like, what? Why? She's like, that's for 20 years of bad sex. He's a bit stunned. Then after a moment he slaps her back. She's like, what? That's for knowing the difference. Dawned on him that now suddenly she knew the difference. Why would that be? So, it's one of the reasons why, in fact, we are afraid of open relationships is partly that. If we are afraid, we can say, to be having feedback and mirrors and challenges and so on, we will not want the other one to have too many experiences, because what if you get such a feedback, for instance? That takes quite a strong character to say, okay, and tell me what can be done better, and you approach it. We have a fear of feedback very often, especially when it comes to our love relationships and our erotic life. We can have a lot of fears around feedback, especially when it comes like that, which it can in an open relationship also. Maybe not with the slap, but you see your beloved coming very happy from a meeting with somebody else and have ideas of new things to try. That's a moment where you have a test on your openness, for instance. But it is an opportunity also to grow, to learn, and to transform a lot. This openness to feedback is a general openness that we should cultivate, because if we are generally speaking open to feedback from life, meaning recognizing our mistakes, taking feedback from different life experiences, taking responsibility for our own experiences, reactions, actions, and so on, then it's much easier to do the same in a relationship. If we are generally speaking afraid of taking feedback and we try to avoid it and blame everything and everybody else, it will be extremely difficult to have an open relationship. An open relationship implies the maturity to be open to take feedback and to take responsibility for your own feelings, your own reactions, your own experiences. Actually, I saw this even, I was researching a little bit at some point because I was curious also how it is for others, because polyamory is not just something that tantrics do, it also regular people, so to speak, are also into experiences of this. What I was very impressed by was actually people who were not approaching this at all from a spiritual perspective, were approaching this practice with a great maturity. Probably some of the most emotionally mature people I have ever seen. Talking about how to deal with jealousy, how to deal with lack of self-confidence, inferiority complexes, taking responsibility for their own reactions, recognizing it was their own insecurities, working with it, getting through it, and so on. That's already admirable, and by the way, already shows the process of transformation present when you dare to be open in such a way and have such an attitude. Already you start to grow. Because you could see in those people, they were alive more than your average closed couple relationship, and their relationships were maybe apparently containing more challenges, but also they were more alive, and they were more real, we can say, in their relationship with one another, and actually more intimate, more honest, and closer together in a certain sense, even if they were facing challenges, because of that emotional maturity. Now, some of the biggest lessons probably around open couple relationship, when it implies more than one lover, would be that of possessiveness and jealousy. I mean, it's probably the one that pops into most of our heads when you think about open relationship and why that could be challenging and difficult. And it is indeed one of the things that we are most often triggered on, and that becomes, for some of us, very, very potent challenge. I can share from my own experience. I used to be like crazy jealous. I'm a quite intense character. The intensity of my jealousy reactions were to the point of I'd rather die than feel like this. This was in my early 20s. That was actually when I was in close relationships, mind you. It wouldn't take much, it was that bad. I mean, I'm sure some of you will recognize it. That it's not necessarily so that the other one actually has another lover or anything is going on, it's just little things will trigger you because you have the resonance, as we would put it, with this state of jealousy. I woke up one morning and I just thought, I don't ever want to feel like this again because it's ruining my life. At least I had that moment of self-awareness and I started doing something about it. And it got better. And then eventually I started open relationships. It got very challenging again. But little by little, I started to overcoming that very big problem in my life, which honestly speaking was causing me a lot of suffering and a lot of pain in different ways, because of course there are underlying reasons for such reactions as well. I have to say there were moments where I thought this is not possible. I don't even think that anybody can not be jealous. They must be lying or pretending is not the case, because I honestly don't believe it's possible. That was my conviction for years. Even when I was in open relationships, I thought, I'm honestly not even sure it's possible. But I stayed optimistic, I kept trying, and then I had moments, not many in the beginning, but I had some moments where I was in a situation where normally I would have been triggered like badly. And I didn't feel jealous at all. I couldn't actually even really remember why I would feel jealous, or why you would have a problem in that moment. I still remember the first time I had that experience. I'm not going to give you the context, it's a bit too personal, but I remember the first time I had that experience. The inner freedom I felt was intoxicating. It was like my whole life was just starting anew somehow. I had a completely new vision on what it means to love, how it means to exist and to be with somebody else, and how much you can love someone else that you are just happy for them instead of feeling all sorts of excruciating pain and inner torment and so on, that you can just be happy for someone you love without even remembering why on earth that would give you such an awful inner reaction. Not that that stayed forever, but at least there started to be glimpses, and I realized that was possible. It is possible. And I got some encouragement at least to go further. I just wanted to mention this because it is one of the obstacles that often we are faced with, this jealousy thing, and most people I know have, at least the ones who feel it a bit more intensely, have this question, but is it possible not to? I can say from personal experience, it is possible not to, and it's so worth all the efforts made in learning this lesson. Now, jealousy basically, we can say, is often connected to the tendency to compare, to a lack of self-confidence, but fundamentally also to a deficiency or a lack. If you think of what makes you possessive or jealous, you are eating a nice meal and you are very hungry. Someone comes to pick something out of your plate and you almost instinctually lash out or growl at them or like, don't do that because you're so hungry. You probably know a little bit the reaction, those who know joy in food, and the little bit knee-jerk reaction that happens if someone approaches your food in that moment. If you are full, you've been eating a lot, you feel satisfied. You will offer your plate happily, share with anybody because you're not that hungry and you feel good. You're not in a lack in that moment. In fact, it is a lot like that with our, you can say, willingness to share, even in this very intimate context. When we feel emotionally deprived, when we feel deprived of touch, of erotic satisfaction, of all the things that we so crave to be fulfilled in, we are not very generous. We jealously guard what we have, so to speak. But it's coming from the feeling of lacking already. When you feel abundant in love, you feel abundantly fulfilled from hours of, again, continent lovemaking, which, by the way, is one of the reasons also why it's much easier to have an open relationship with multiple relationships, we can say, if you are practicing amorous continence. And there is a real fulfillment. When both partners and that both lovers are completely fulfilled erotically, you do become more generous in many different ways. Not only erotically fulfilled, but also emotionally and kind of complete, feeling complete and completely fulfilled. In those moments you have surplus, you can be generous, you can offer, you can share, you have more to give. But when you feel in lack, which is the case for many people, feeling emotional lack because real intimacy has not been cultivated in a relationship we're only 50% or 15% open to. 50 would already be very good. We don't feel fulfilled in terms of intimacy and emotional satisfaction and togetherness. We don't touch each other enough, and we are deprived, therefore, also of that kind of intimacy. We don't make love enough. We don't know how to make each other ecstatically happy. We are people who are hungry, very hungry, and if anyone wants to touch our food, we freak out because we are afraid that we won't have enough, and already we have so little, is the feeling. And that's also why in a relationship, first cultivate fulfillment, you can say, satisfaction. Be fulfilled, starting by filling your own heart with love, of course, and being radiant, abundant. When you have a lot of love, you are not afraid you're going to lose some, so to speak, when your heart is full of love. But also make sure that you are fulfilled erotically and that you are fulfilled emotionally, that you learn to be profoundly intimate and to feel fulfilled and happy. A person who is very fulfilled and happy, honestly, jealousy is much harder to trigger. Possessiveness is much harder to trigger. It is what I also discovered myself. When you are happy and fulfilled, honestly, it doesn't make sense in the same way anymore. And you start to have profound experiences of a completely different way of existing, that one from the heart, where you don't lose by offering, by sharing, by giving, and where you start to rest in yourself in a completely different way. But this aspect of fulfillment is incredibly important to pay attention to, because it is one of the reasons why we have so many problems in being happy, even in one relationship, because we are not fulfilled. Partly and mostly because we are not fully open to that relationship, and we are also not aiming, we can say, consciously for that fulfillment and for making each other happy. Because you can already understand that if you have a relationship where both lovers are aiming to make the other one happy, fulfillment are much more likely to appear, because both are very busy making each other happy. That means there is a lot of activity towards happiness and fulfillment, and a lot of attention on that. If you're in a relationship where both lovers try to get their happiness and their fulfillment, there is very little. There is a lack, and therefore a constant frustration, and you need to jealously guard what you have, because otherwise you fear that you would have even less. So focus also on fulfilling emotional needs, and definitely also this erotic fulfillment. And very important also in this context, and a secret that we don't realize for sure in the moment, that we feel very jealous or possessive or challenged in different ways. To not compete, because that's also often why we fall into these reactions. We start to compare and to compete with the other one, because we don't feel self-confident. You don't ever lose your position really in a relationship based on love, except if you run away. And most often, if you really look at relationships, what actually happens is not that somebody else appears and you lose your position, so to speak, or you are forgotten. Someone else appears and you run away. Because it's hard, because of for different reasons you withdraw and you run away, and therefore you lose your position, so to speak. It's hard not to, don't get me wrong, because it can trigger a lot of insecurities, but be attentive, because your position usually is only lost because you run away in these moments. Every relationship has somehow its own role, which means it's not that we can say your position is less secure because there is more than one relationship. And when the relationships are based on love, meaning that we let the heart choose, because this is quite important in order for harmony to exist, we can say with more relationships, that the heart is actually free to choose. We are open and the heart chooses. Sometimes you might even be surprised what your heart will choose, because it doesn't necessarily fit your plans, so to speak. But your heart chooses something, and the interesting thing is your heart will always choose transformation. That's how the heart is wired. So your heart will choose exactly the opportunity for the most transformation for you in that moment, for growth, and for, of course, also the challenges that will come along with that. But somehow it will fit in the overall picture, because the heart is creating a network, something that fits and kind of works out, we can say, miraculously. Meaning also, I can say from a woman's perspective, I'm sure there are kind of similar examples for men. But for instance, for a woman, often when she's not in her 20s anymore, there is the big fear of the younger model that might appear and be more interesting, be more fresh and so on, looking more firm and whatever it might be. And there is a big fear somehow of having your position taken by this younger model. Also because she usually has more time than you do. Usually for the one with the perfect hair and perfect nails and perfect everything and young and so on, she doesn't have a lot of responsibilities or is so very busy with a lot of things. But actually it's not a problem if you're a wise woman or a wise man. We can probably find a similar example for men. Because what you discover is that actually it's good, because she has more time and sometimes you don't have so much time, honestly speaking, because you are busy preparing things, taking care of things, reading, you have things to do somehow, being in a different place in your life than when you are in your early 20s and just want to have fun. It's a different moment in your life and you have different interests and you might not have so much time on your hands. And then it's quite good, it gives you time for other things, other things that you want to do. And you will also realize that, honestly speaking, you can make him happy in ways she doesn't even know yet. Because she's not there yet. She has something to offer in her youth, her freshness, and so on. But you know things that she doesn't even imagine exists in this moment. There is nothing to be afraid of. It's just two very different things. Again, the toddler and the whatever, 20, 30-year-old relationship. It's two completely different things and they don't actually compete with one another. That's often the mistake that we make. We try to make every relationship the same, so to speak, and we believe it's a competition. It doesn't work like that. Because life has different rhythms and has its seasons, so to speak. Same as our life, same as everything in our experience. Move in different rhythms. And relationships have different needs in different moments. Yes, if there is a little new one, probably it takes more attention than something that's a bit more grown and can feed itself sometimes. And if a relationship has a problem, also maybe it needs a bit more attention, because same as a child would if it was having a problem, you would give it more attention. It doesn't mean you can't take care of all your children, so to speak. It's just that they will have different needs in different moments. And rarely, actually, it will collide. We think it will, and that's also where usually one of the most frequent questions I get is around exactly this practical, how to practically do it. Because if you have that one, and what if they both want this in the same time, and then how would you do it, and so on. And you try to make a plan. It's not possible, because nobody even knows if that situation would ever occur. Most often it does not, if you stay in the heart. Most often it somehow, apparently miraculously fits. And one is away on holiday, the other one has a crisis, and then you're all present there, and so on. And somehow it works, that you can be present where it is needed 100% when it is needed. What I would say actually from this perspective, by the way, of the difficult emotions coming with the open couple relationship, one of the biggest gifts on a very practical level that comes from open relationship is an increasing state of inner freedom. And that you become much more self-confident, you get to know yourself a lot better, you learn to truly love, which honestly speaking, I didn't really know how to love before I started being in an open relationship, because I didn't have to. I was busy building a safe little box where I could, have things the way I wanted them, and I thought it was love. It was not, I realized. After a lot of suffering, I realized it wasn't actually. I didn't know how to love. I knew how to be nice, I knew how to do things within that frame that was set up, but I didn't really know what it meant to love somebody completely with all my heart. It took a lot of challenges in different directions before I started to realize what that means. And of course, it came with challenges, but on the other hand, I would never be without it. Because once you start to know what it means to feel your heart and to be 100% open to a relationship, you would not want it any other way. And you start to rest in yourself. Also because you start to get a deeper relationship with your most important relationship, so to speak. Because that's another question also. Do we then have a main relationship and then the others, or how does that work? You do have a main relationship, by the way, always. The one you have with your own heart. That is your central relationship. And if that one doesn't work, all the rest doesn't either. So that one you start with, being able to be in your heart, having a relationship with your own heart and loving. And then the other relationships are formed around that. And yes, some will be older, some will be younger, some will fulfill a certain role in your life, and some will fulfill another. That's a different story. But the central relationship is always the one that you are having with your own heart, and the one that you should stay centered in at all times, and the one you return to first and foremost in every moment, and then you engage the other relationships from there. Now a little bit about rules. I'm just picking up, by the way, different things, ideas I thought to put forward, and then in a moment I'll finish, and you can also have your inputs. Rules. People often ask about rules. What are the rules for a relationship like that? How do you set up a relationship? How are the rules different from the rules that you have when it's a closed relationship and so on? Because we like to define things. It's how we are curious about things as well. We like to define them and to know how to do it. What are the rules for something? Open relationships means being truly free in love. Free to let your heart choose, not just changing the rule set. So not just saying, okay, now the rule is we can do whatever we want, or we can have so and so many lovers, but not on Saturday because that's our day, and birthdays belong to that one, and whatever. It's not like that. Doesn't mean, however, that there are no rules, so to speak. There are rules, but they are universal. We speak in the Tantra and Yoga class about the yamas and niyamas. Those are the rules. The guidelines, we can say, of the heart. The rules given by your heart that will fit, we can say, in any given experience. But it's not an outer imposed rule. And this is the very biggest difference of having a relationship from the heart and a relationship that is, we can say, a closed relationship, because it's based on the rule set and the frame that your mind has created and the contract you have signed, so to speak, on that. When we create a rule set from the mind, very much, or pretty much always what we do, is that we are creating a frame we can feel comfortable within. And as you know, comfort zone is the zone of the ego, so we create a frame where we can feel comfortable, meaning staying within our current ego frame and not be challenged too much and not grow and definitely not transform efficiently on the spiritual path. So we shouldn't, for sure, have an imposed rule set. But it doesn't mean there are no rules. It also doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. It never does. It just means that the guidelines come from within. If you remember also, when we teach the yamas and niyamas, we say that the ultimate yama and niyama, the ultimate rule of behavior is love. Love and do what you want. If you come from a place of love, if your heart is radiating love, you will be perfectly behaving in accordance with the yamas and niyamas, meaning you will not hurt somebody, you will not lie to somebody, you will not, whatever they say there, you will not hoard or have attachments, you will give freely, you will be content, and so on. These are the rules you should apply, so to speak, in your relationship and in your life, generally speaking, because in reality there is no difference. In an open relationship, the way you are in the relationship would be the way you are in life. There are no boxes there. And therefore even the, we can say, whole experience of relationship becomes different because it becomes coherent. It's not that you have one relationship, one relationship, one relationship. They don't touch each other, they don't affect each other in any way. They do affect each other, but in a good way. What you assimilate in one relationship, you bring in the other. You can learn a lot. You will even see that when your lover has another lover, they assimilate new nuances. You can let that trouble you, or you can appreciate it, because you can learn a lot and be very enriched from it, actually, and inspired in different ways. But indeed, you have to come from a very central relationship with your own heart in order to be open for this and in order for that to unfold in a harmonious way. Now just a last idea before I also let you come with ideas of what we should be speaking about. Do you believe that you only would have one relationship in your entire life? Not really. Nobody really believes that. We have more. I mean, we have many different relationships, usually not overlapping if we don't talk polyamory. But in a sense it is multiple relationships. I mean, you had that relationship for 6 months, and that for 2 years, and that for 5 years, and that for 10, and then this, and you had more relationships, just not overlapping in time. Except if you ask a quantum physicist, they might have a different opinion about the unfolding of time and whether things are simultaneous or not. But nevertheless, nobody expects really to have just one relationship for their entire life. We are expecting to have more than one. If you look in your heart, your high school sweetheart, is he or she still there? Somewhere. Can you feel it still? Most of us can. They're still there. And the next one too, actually, if you look. In a way, everybody is there. In your heart still. Of course you don't say that. You will say, no, my darling, it's only you. No, I don't even remember their name. It's not true. They're there in your heart. All of them. In reality, you are in a multiple relationship, whether you are classifying yourself as such or not. Your heart holds it. Somebody who was there once is still there in your heart. They didn't leave. They're all there with you in the room, even when you are with your sweetheart, and even if you don't say it out loud. They are there because they made you who you are, and they're a part of you. All those experiences, all those loves and so on, made you you and enriched your heart in different ways. They're not there. Just as an intuitive example to understand, it's somewhat similar here with multiple relationships, just that it's not one after the other, it's overlapping in time, but the principle is the same, and actually not foreign to us at all. We think it's something, it's so different. It's not actually, it's not different from how you work. It's just different from how we normally look at it. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, nobody really would think there's anything wrong with still feeling those loves present there and appreciating what they did for you to make you who you are and so on. That's perfectly normal. Of course, the challenging shift is to consider the same if they're happening simultaneously in the same span of time. Now, different relationships also will have different roles to play in our lives. Same if you think back of your different multiple relationships, but not multiple in the same time. They had different strengths. Some of them you had a profound intellectual connection, and that was kind of one of the highlights, and you really inspired each other like that. Others were super sensual and very erotic and full of fire like that. And some were very emotionally satisfying and gave you a lot of things in such a way. Relationships are very different. And yes, sometimes also we can develop other things, so we kind of have more and more also with the same person. Actually, that's helped by having more than one relationship. What you bring in from another relationship can enrich the relationship you're in to also develop more in the intellectual aspect, the sensual aspect, or whatever it is that maybe is not so present in that relationship. But different relationships have different roles, mean different things for you, and awaken different things in your being. So we should really consider to cherish each relationship for what it is, and to stay out of that very toxic tendency to compare, because this is the mind's game, so to speak, that we enter in these comparisons, instead of staying with the love and cherishing what is there and focusing on our task, which is to be open. Because when you're completely open to a relationship, honestly, it doesn't matter if the other one has 2 or 3 or 5 more. It really doesn't. If you are focused on your openness to that relationship and making each other happy in that relationship, you will see it loses relevance somehow. It's when you fall in the mental patterns of comparing and considering in that way who is getting more when and so on in a very linear way, it becomes tormenting and difficult, and you even forget why you want to do it in the first place. But it's like having a garden, you know, each tree and flower and so on has its specific needs, and it's time when it needs it. And you need to take care of, be the gardener. Of course, you should also not have more plants than you can take care of, but that's a different story. Your heart will also show you your capacity. And the important thing in an open relationship is that you are open to the love. That's why it could just be as one relationship, who knows, and you're profoundly open to that relationship, 100%, and it's a beautiful love. But it is very possible, let's face it, that if you are very open, and you are very open to love, you might also feel love somewhere else at some point. And then you should be open to that too. It doesn't mean that it has to be a relationship necessarily. It doesn't mean it has to be an erotic relationship. Maybe it is, maybe it's something else, but you should be open. You have the freedom, let's say, to be open also for that, and to cultivate those experiences as well, as part of your growth and process of evolution. So these were some of the main ideas I wanted to bring up. I wanted to not keep it so, let's say, dense as a presentation, in the sense that it is a topic that often comes with a lot of questions, and then it becomes more relevant for you as well if you can give your input and we can talk about what is on your heart. So feel free. So if anyone has questions, comments, things they want me to expand on. Well, I mean, I don't have children, so I cannot give you my personal example on this, but I read up on it a bit, just exactly because this question always comes. And I read some accounts of children who grew up in open relationships with more than one dad or more than one mom or however. From what I could see is they exactly had the same problems or no problems as any other child. There was absolutely no difference from what I could see. And anyway, these days, I mean, you can have two moms and two dads and two whatever. I mean, I don't think it would be so shocking somehow that you would have three parents or four. I don't actually consider it such a big issue. I mean, of course, I understand that from our conventional standard of considering that the family is one dad and one mom and then the kids, okay, it seems like it's a problem, but let's face it, hardly any families look like that these days. Either mom or dad is missing, and maybe there is somebody else, maybe not. As I said, maybe it's two dads or two moms, or who knows. But very rarely it looks like a normal family unit. So I think somehow we also anticipate problems that might not be there. Then of course it's up for each and every family to figure out how that works. But what is important for children is that they feel loved. And if you can find a way of doing that with a lot of love and care for the children, and even, growing wise, like that when they grow up, you can share with them, listen, I had all these experiences and this is how, and with love, and you come with wisdom and care and love for them. I doubt that they're going to feel they had a bad childhood because it was a bit unusual. But again, of course, it's a very personal choice how you wish to do that. But I think often we see problems before we see solutions, maybe even problems that aren't even necessarily there. As I said, I could only take it on accounts I saw of children who did grow up in such a situation and their comments on it. And actually what I noticed in those children is that they were surprisingly mature as well. As I said, the ones who practice polyamory, that I read their accounts and so on, I was surprised by the emotional maturity of these people because it's very rare. Of course, you can expect that their children will be the same because that's the example they have. Because we grow as we see our examples, and most people are emotionally retarded, honestly speaking. And then you have children growing up the same. Are they worse off, the ones who are emotionally mature, worse off because they had 3 or 4 parents instead of 1 or 2? Personally, I don't think so, but again, I can't make choices for others. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by practical notions, but I mean, when we say the moving of the blanket, it means when you are with one, the other one feels that they get cold, so to speak, because all your attention goes somewhere else, is often the example they're given. First of all, it actually stands with this central relationship, the relationship with your own heart. If you are not good at being present with yourself, you cannot really be present with anybody else, and hence the little presence you have will be moving around sometimes like crazy to try to cover however much you try to expand over, with usually not so much success. But when you are having a very good relationship with your own heart, and your heart is radiating love like the sun, nobody gets cold. So that's kind of how it starts. I don't know if that's practical enough for you, but of course there are 2 things here. There could be your ability or not to expand, and there could be your lover's perception of what is happening. And of course, sometimes we can feel abandoned even if we are not, and then you have to highlight that situation, and you need to figure that out and solve that together, as we do in a relationship. So these are 2 different things, but of course, when you get that feedback, it's still good to check and see, okay, but am I actually like the radiant sun right now or not? And if not, you work on your part of it while also supporting her in figuring out why it is she feels left out when it's very hot around, so to speak, why she will still feel cold. I mean, the one who says you don't love me is usually the one who doesn't love in that moment. But still, it doesn't mean that you stop loving, that you need to love even more and to help them also to feel the love and to realize, because it's true, I mean, jealousy distorts our perceptions massively. But still have compassion. If you know how it feels, have compassion, because it's really not an easy situation to be in. And then you love even more. Because if you can love more than they can get jealous, you win, so to speak, in the sense that love wins. But you need to be able to love even more than the craziness of their jealousy, which is rare these days, which is also why often you can't get out of a jealousy crisis. I can tell you, if you're in a full-blown jealousy crisis and the other one just loves you more, doesn't run away, doesn't react, just loves you more, doesn't compromise or whatever to try to make it go away, but loves you even more than the heights of your most crazy jealousy. You can't do anything. It's irresistible. You'll have to let it go. It just bursts it at some point. You cannot. And that, I mean, especially we can say here with the consciousness, the presence of a man, if you can stay there and love her even more than she can the most possibly hate you or be mad at you in that moment, love will win. She will win. You cannot stay mad at a person who loves like that. You cannot. It's just not possible. It alchemizes everything in that space. Could manifest all sorts of things. I mean, again, each relationship is different. You don't know. I mean, but you see, the problem comes because we have a very fixed idea often. If we're in a relationship, and that means any relationship, if it's not just sex, it has to be moving in together. It has to have this. It has to have that financial aspect. It has to. It's not true. Some yes, some no. I mean, if we're really open to that relationship and to what it is meant to be, and we cherish it for what it is, we will see that not very few relationships are meant to have, we can say, a very material aspect in that sense maybe to it. Some might. But if we are really open for the relationships, you'll see that there are a lot less conflicts emerging on that level. Because kind of what we have the idea, okay, we're very established with one, and then we have another relationship, and then if we're serious in that relationship, that will need to be established in exactly the same way, and with the same frame and so on. It's because we have created an idea about relationships that is a one-size-fits-all. It's not nice, because it's very wrong and limiting and destroying, actually, relationships. We don't let it grow beyond that frame. We don't let it mature into what it's supposed to be. Exactly with children, like when parents decide what they're supposed to be, like a doctor when they grow up, because that's the only option for their child. Maybe the child doesn't want to, maybe it doesn't even have the talent, maybe it's meant for something completely different. And it will either fail or be miserable because you're trying to put it into that frame. We do it so often with relationships, this. So we need to also let go of this very rigid idea of if a relationship is serious, it means it ticks these boxes, and then we have the checklist. Often you mutilate a relationship like that because you're not true to what it really is. You don't let it grow, and you don't even realize how much more it could be if you would be completely open, if you would be completely honest and present with that relationship and cherish it for what it is. Because there are way more amazing things in a relationship than owning property together or something. That's like nothing compared to what a relationship can be in terms of depth and importance for you and your life and having a place in your life which is something extraordinary. It might be your least important relationship, so to speak, the one that manifests with common property somehow, or the least transforming one, potentially, who knows. But when we are open, you will see that conflict is usually just a speculation. It doesn't really exist. Because also we attract and we open to our heart according to our aspiration and our wish to transform. So we will also attract what we can say, what we long for. And actually, by the way most attractive thing in any person is an open heart, more than anything else. Like really. It's also why, sometimes you can see someone who looks perfect and you feel nothing. But then you meet someone who has a radiant heart and you are mesmerized. It's so attractive. It's an open heart that makes you can say, radiant and also attractive in this way. And then you will attract, we can say, the right lovers according to your aspirations when we are approaching it in an open way. By staying centered in your heart, I mean, yes, it's very flattering also if people appreciate you indeed. Sometimes that's part of why we feel attracted, is because someone is very open towards us. But you can appreciate that without engaging in a relationship with everybody who approaches you in such a moment. Your heart would tell you differently. And it's also very possible sometimes to express this openness and friendships and so on. It doesn't all of it have to turn into an erotic relationship. That's a little bit again a different version of this, one size fits all. Okay, if I feel anything, then it has to be that. It's very unnuanced and a bit banal to approach it like this, because love has so many different ways of expressing itself. It's not like that, and that's how it is for all of them. So, again, I can't give a rule for that, because yes, a new relationship needs more attention in a sense, you can say, because it's new and you need something there to grow. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there are no other relationships around in that moment. There could be, but again, at the choice of your heart, letting the heart choose, which indeed is a very big test when it comes to open relationship, because usually after, having closed relationships and then opening your heart and you start to feel more, and as you say, everyone starts to look more beautiful, and you even feel that you're allowed. It's like, it can make anyone go a little bit crazy if you're into it, because you're allowed, and maybe you do a bit more than just your heart tells you. The heart is higher up many times in these cases. That can be part of the learning curve. Maybe you are a bit too much around, and then you learn to tell the difference also by having such experiences where maybe it wasn't entirely your heart that was. You compare also with the experience and so on, eventually you learn when it's the heart, when it's something else. Who knows? Maybe it's good for you if you have the tendency to go very enthusiastic. Maybe it's a good exercise. It could be a good exercise. As you take a spiritual practice to transform some things, you say, okay, for 1 year, let's forget about it. I'm just focusing on this to at least be 100% present and open here. And then we can see how things are with my heart and my situation and so on. So for you, maybe it could be the situation, but we can't put it as a rule when you have a new relationship 1 year and then you are, and so on. We have to be honest with ourselves. With eating and being satisfied, they also say that appetite comes with eating, and love comes from loving. And it's true, the more you eat, the more you have appetite, the more you love, the more you have appetite, the more you make love, the more you have appetite, you're completely fulfilled. But you also have appetite, like Jeno was expressing a little bit in a different way. So, I mean, being completely fulfilled with someone, because often we have this idea, but if you go anywhere else, it's because I am not enough. It doesn't work like that. A person who is very fulfilled and very open, again, from their heart, will attract what they need to transform. We need to look at this from the perspective of growth and transformation. And then, of course, as you say, there could be a danger that we are just trying to look somewhere else to fix the problem that is there in our relationship, and we can't be bothered anymore to try to make it work there, so we try to bring it in from somewhere else. That is the wrong motivation. If we are in that relationship, we should continue working on that issue. Now that said, who knows? Being in another relationship where that works really well, you might actually bring some of that into the relationship where it doesn't. It can help solve the problem. If, for instance, you are having a difficult time erotically and you get a new relationship where that's not the case, and suddenly you are very happy and satisfied and fulfilled, it will help a lot in your existing relationship, trust me. So that can be an advantage. Now the problem is if we start to look elsewhere from a perspective of frustrations, because then we rarely look from the heart. Then we look from hunger. I need somebody because I'm frustrated. I need somebody because I feel lonely. I need somebody because we forget the central relationship with our own heart, and we start to look for things on the outside. That means starting from the wrong motivation. It rarely works out well because it's not actually the heart that chooses in those moments, it's our mind thinking, okay, I need to solve this, let's pick and let's try to fix. So I think you point to something that's really important, and this is that it's very important that we come from the right place when we make choices, when we open, for instance. You shouldn't try to have an open relationship because you're not happy in the one you're in. That would be a very bad place to start. You start by being 100% open to the relationship that you're in, aiming to make it as fulfilling as possible. And then when that state of openness becomes more and more profound and you open towards life and love more, then you also follow your heart when it invites others, we can say, in that space. So it should be a kind of organic unfolding in that way. Actually, a very inspiring example, by the way, in this that I had was my very first Tantra teachers in Denmark, a couple that now lives in Iceland. They've been together for 30-something years now, I think. Now, they say that they claim one of the reasons why they're so successful in staying together for so long, because they have an open relationship and they went through a lot of challenges, is that they're not allowed to finish the relationship when they don't feel good. So when they're in a bad place. So when you are like angry and furious with the other one, you know, when you usually just say, that's it, I don't ever want to see you again, and you leave and you slam the door and that's it. They're not allowed. They can only finish the relationship when they feel good. And when they feel good, they don't want to, because that's how it works. And it's a very creative and beautiful way of dealing with that, you know. And it's a bit the same. If you want to open up, okay, but where do you want to open up from? Do you feel good? Do you feel open? And do you feel in love in this relationship? Yes, good. Then let's open and share more. No, it's just because I'm tired of you and I don't want this anymore and I want somebody else. Okay, good. Maybe we need to consider, do we still want to be in this relationship, or should we work on it a bit before we expand, so to speak? So to be very honest with this and to be attentive indeed where your decisions are coming from in those moments. Yes, it's difficult to tell lust from love, and it's something that, I mean, in many cases, it's part of the education, we can say, to tell the difference between Svadhisthana and Anahata. The best way of learning to do it is to love more, to start to understand what it actually means to love, because then the difference is pretty obvious. But indeed, it can take a while for that education, and in the process you might make some mistakes. If you learn from them, I don't think that's a huge problem. I mean, it's possible. In terms of having multiple sexual relationships, I mean, everyone is free to do as they please, but in my experience, polyamory with multiple sexual partners doesn't bring anything spectacular from the perspective of spiritual transformation, and might just bring a lot of suffering, honestly speaking, because it's not done in a way that's harmonious for anybody, and somebody ends up getting hurt. But that's my observation, seeing it around. Then part B, yes, of course. I mean, sometimes maybe you are not entirely understanding the taste of your beloved's or his or her choices, and bringing somebody new and so on. That can be a challenging experience in different ways. But again, being open to the relationship, we can't say that there's a recipe for how to deal with that. The two lovers will have to find a way. And most importantly, to say, okay, but if you are there from at least having as one of the high purposes that you want your beloved to be happy, and you want to make them happy, even if you're not the one making them happy, because that's the challenging add-on to that perspective, that you are happy even if somebody else made them happy. Focusing on that and aiming to have that approach will help you overcome a lot of things in that direction, which is when you start to learn also a profound generosity and altruism in love. You start to become a generous lover, which is again a huge shift, an avalanche in your inner existence. When you can be a truly generous lover, your life is different, but like forever and in everything. Because you make such a shift in your heart and your perspective and your sense of self that is completely extraordinary. I mean, I still maintain the importance here of open relationship is much more than just having multiple experiences. It's about the growth that comes out of it, because this is an opportunity to transform yourself in the most profound sense, to have a shift of consciousness, basically, because you center more and more in your heart. You start to exist outside of space and time as other people perceive it, and you start to relate to existence in a completely different way. That's the only way, in fact, you're going to be fully successful in open relationships, is when you shift to a different way of relating to life and to love. But when you reach there, even all the difficulties along the way are way worth it. But openness and the wish for the other one to truly be happy will help you overcome a lot of things. And then, of course, also consideration for each other, supporting each other when it's difficult. It's not about just saying, okay, but this is how it is, deal with it. That's also a mistake that sometimes, especially men, make when they try to be firm. This is the situation, now just deal with it, and your jealousy is your problem. It's very heartless. Not exactly what you do when you're in a loving relationship, supporting each other. You don't compromise, but you also don't abandon. You solve it together. You pass through that together and you find ways. Which love always wins. No matter the obstacle, love will find a solution. If we love, but that's often the problem. We don't love, as I said, we compete or we compare or we run away in that. And that's how we feel abandoned, because we run away, in fact. I mean, actually, if you look at ancient societies, a lot of them were not monogamous, not at all. And they actually have much more harmonious societal structures as a result of it. Monogamy is a fairly new invention that basically mostly appeared with the sense of property. Obviously, you have your property, your thing there, that is yours. And in societies where that's not so present, monogamy usually doesn't exist in the sense that we understand it. Even often family structures will be completely different, by the way, speaking of family structures, where it's more of a group raising children, or they don't even necessarily know who their main parent is, and so on. It's a completely different way of doing it, and actually in many cases much more coherent societal structure. So you could say that in some ways it is lost. But we're not taught about a lot of things that are super important. I mean, who here had a proper sexual education? Anybody? In school?
I'm joking.
It's the only one? No. I mean, really, it's such an important thing. You say, but why? When we can feel blissful, ecstatic states and multiple orgasms, and why were we not taught about this in school? Yeah, why? We need to transform some things. Same with love. If love is like this and can help us access these states and be fulfilled and happy and can be so free, why did nobody tell us? There's lack of education, because nobody knows, I suppose. Or a few knows. It's part of also the process of transformation, that we also need to ask, and we need to want. And these things come into our life in accordance with our aspiration. When we aspire for more, then we start to learn. I mean, you're here because you aspire to understand, to take different perspectives, to find a different way maybe than just the one served to you conventionally, in different ways and in different areas of life. Because there is an aspiration for it, but somehow that law works. Ask and you shall be given, but you need to ask for this in this life. And then hopefully as more and more people actually find fulfillment in love and eroticism and become more free of these dogmas and very rigid mental approach, and we access a heart-based living, who knows, maybe there will be a planetary shift. But somebody needs to start. We need to start to radiate love like the sun, and gradually that will light fires around. So for sure the beginning for me to be able to overcome it was actually learning to love, but in a profound way. To really be in love so much, I had to deal with that, because I didn't want to run away. That was the first condition. And then I had to be confronted with those feelings. And then to increase the love more and more. Now, the problem, I don't know if you notice with jealousy, the main issue with jealousy is when you feel really jealous, you don't even want to feel otherwise. Like you feel extremely justified in that feeling, and you don't actually want to stop. That's the main thing, because if you just wanted to stop, it might be possible, to just leave it. But it's a very, it is a resonance. It's a particular energy that you enter in resonance with, and unfortunately it has this very sticky quality, and you can almost feel it's like icky and kind of sticky and raw. But you don't want to stop in that moment. Anything but let that go somehow. And you need to start to shift that by, you can say, cleaning out also that resonance from you. Learning to say no to it when it appears, so to speak, because you start to recognize it. And then to, again, as I said, my starting part was to start to love more, so that I started to have a little glimmer of a wish at least to get out of that state. Also, I was fortunate enough that I was loved more than I could be jealous, so that was kind of the advantage for me in that moment. But then having those moments where I didn't feel jealousy, that becomes an example. And once you actually have hope that it's possible, that starts to shift something. When you start to feel, okay, I do actually believe that this is possible. Somewhere there in the darkness of your jealousy, you remember that it might be very faint, and you might not succeed in that moment, but you remember, no, it's possible actually not to feel like this. And you start to go less and less deep into that state, and gradually somehow you find your way out, until you diminish so much, we can say, the point of resonance with that energy. It doesn't have the same intensity anymore in your being. I can still get jealous, by the way, but not as much as I used to. It's just not possible. I don't resonate with that energy in the same way at all. Now I get jealous to an extent I can deal with it. I can say, no thank you. And then over the years it gets less and less and less. The more I say, no thank you, I'm going to choose to love in this moment, the more it loses hold on me. You're not going to fix it in a moment. Jealousy is very difficult if you have a tendency towards it. It will take you a while. It's a gradual process, but you have to start somewhere. And once you have hope, the belief that it's possible, if in this moment you think it makes sense and you believe it's possible, remember how it feels. And then also, when you are in that, for me, as I said also, what helped me was that I woke up one morning and said, I don't ever want to feel like this again, because my life is a hell. I don't want to feel like this again. And to also recognize that, what it does to you when you're jealous. To start to cultivate self-awareness and see how it makes you feel, how it makes you behave. You become a despicable person, you hurt the one you love. It's wrong, it's not love. And then when you start to see that, not just be blinded by your feelings, you start to be able to make some choices. And the more you make different choices, the less that has a hold on you, the less it controls you. And you start to make your way out. But love is the most important thing. That you start to amplify your ability to love and to remember in those moments, because again, it's like jealousy feeling. It's like a nasty one to talk about, isn't it? Because it really gets all the worst things out of you. But in the moment where you're very jealous, not only that you feel like horrible, you also you feel very justified. You want to keep that feeling, and you also kind of want the other one to suffer. That's part of the whole jealousy thing, isn't it? And then you realize, come on, if I love him, why is it I want him to feel bad? that because I feel bad. And it's these kind of, when you can start to have a little bit of light of awareness, which comes with love. When you truly love somebody, it's like, wait a minute, I love him, I don't want to hurt him. Because that's kind of also often what makes jealousy even worse. You feel jealous, then you do something really bad, and then you feel bad that you did that afterwards, and it gets even worse, and you feel worse about yourself, which makes you more vulnerable to jealousy, and it's a difficult chain of emotions. But in starting, the awareness that comes with loving somebody profoundly is where you start to have a hope to get out. Thank you. But also with all of these things that come up, to remember, at least for those of you who practice yoga, is a process of resonance. When you experience an inner state or an energy a lot, it's because you resonate with it. That seed of resonance is in your being. And if you start to purify yourself from that, you will feel it less. It will have less hold of you because you just don't have that energy in your being anymore. It doesn't have where to stick, so to speak, when you start to clean yourself out. I mean, of course it can happen that a relationship doesn't last forever, but you put it as if it stops because there is another relationship.
Or starts to fade.
That's almost never the case. That's usually not why a relationship ends. It's because something isn't working there and wasn't taken care of. If you take complete care of all your relationships, they will not end because another one comes. They might end for other reasons. Who knows? Maybe you make decisions and so on, and that it ends for other reasons, but not because another one comes. That's just what we use as an excuse, but it's not the case. It's because there were things there we didn't take care of properly. When it comes to finding time, I mean, the secret is again that you let your heart choose. I mean, and this is the challenging thing, because that's what we need to learn as a condition, to let the heart choose. The heart, when the heart chooses, you will see that it will fit. Somehow, exactly as I mentioned a few times, it fits so that relationships don't have crisis in the same time, don't need you in the same way in the same time, don't need the same things from you or involves you in the same way. And somehow it just miraculously fits. Now I know that sounds like I'm just taking an easy way out by not really giving you an explanation, but it's again because we try to have again this scheme, like practically, how does it work? It's inevitable, we always react like that in front of the idea of open relationships, okay, but practically how do I manage, somehow, with time and with the different relationships? And we want to work it out so that we have an idea and then follow that plan. It just doesn't work like that. It cannot, because again, we are approaching it from a logical perspective. Here we enter a dimension that doesn't have such problems, because time and space works in very different ways when it is in the heart. And things fit in a coherent unit. When we fall out of the heart, things clash and collapse, and then there's a good feedback. Okay, hey, wait a minute, I forgot my central relationship with my own heart. That's why everything is a mess around me, because I am not coming from the heart. And then you might even realize you started a relationship you shouldn't have, because it wasn't your heart, it was something else, or whatever. In those moments, we learn how to choose from the right place. But of course, you can say, yes, you should be responsible. Don't start 10 relationships in the same time and you feel exhausted and you're only 10% present in each one because you never sleep and you don't have any money to buy anyone flowers or whatever because you're just exhausted. That's not the point. You go 100% wherever you are. So always, we're 100%. We're not having 100%, we're dividing on whatever relationships we're in. Wherever you are, you're 100%. It's 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100. 100% doesn't mean 100% of your time. It means 100% of your heart. And 100% of your presence when you are there. And 100% of taking that person in your heart. And the problem of, we can say, spreading ourselves too thinly mostly comes when, sorry I point to Yenu again, but he's the one who put the question. Mostly comes when suddenly in this enthusiasm of the wave of love, everyone is so beautiful, we just feel it must be love, must be it must be. And suddenly you have more than you possibly can tend to. But it was not your heart saying start a relationship there. It was your heart saying, oh, it's beautiful. And it takes more than a tickle, let's say, to make something deep in this way. So, but again, it's something we learn also often by making mistakes. I mean, honestly, don't expect that you can do this without making mistakes and getting hurt and bruised a bit. Anything we learn takes a bit of practice. Same with this. But you will learn eventually to choose with your heart if you aspire to. And then that's where we return. But remember this, the central relationship is with your heart. If you start from there, you will learn faster. But if you start to rely on formalities, this is number 1 and number 2 and number 3, and that gets this much time and this much, and you fell out of your heart and it's going to be a disaster. Nobody will be happy no matter how well you follow your very well-designed schedule. Everyone will complain and be upset and not feel loved, and it will be a mess. Go here. Then 100%, whatever it is in this moment. You are there 100% and you follow what is in your heart. And then somehow you find your way to make things work out harmoniously. Good. So let's finish here in the heart. Basically, we can say open relationships. And for those who wish to really learn to love and to grow and to also let your beloved free to grow rather than putting them in the prison of your fears. But it is really for the, we can say, ones who aspire to be like a radiant sun and to offer a lot of love into this world. So thank you very much.